Guys, I have a confession.
It's confession time.
It's confession time. We were talking about Shia
Yeah.
earlier today. On my way to you guys' house to carpool over here, I definitely hit an animal.
No.
Yeah.
Dog or a cat?
I'm
Or
not.
a possum?
I don't know what it was. All I know is.
You don't know what it was?
All I know, there was crazy amount of animals crossing the street at one time.
What?
One was one that's boom, 20 more feet, boom, across.
No.
They were crossing all. I don't know. They just were like
Maybe it
These
was
are
like-
random animals?
random animals
That you've never seen before.
No, never seen.
What? It's like a pack of chupacabras. You know what a chupacabra is?
Yeah, I do.
Dude, this is like in Mexico in like the 90s. There were like alien like monsters that were like eating like little goats. Yeah.
They just
Like little
targeted
lambs.
little goats.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Why did they do
What?
that?
So you hit something.
I did. Yeah. So basically, I was
This
like,
is so crazy.
basically, I was like on my GPS. I was like, okay, I gotta take this next turn. And then I was like, because I looked up and then I saw all these animals crossing, but I couldn't move quick enough because there was the one right in front of me, and I just heard dum underneath my car, like it did like a bounce, like boom, 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 and then I was like, and I looked out my window, and I looked out my rear or my side window, and it was kind of just like rolling and then flopping, and then I
But you
was
couldn't
like,
tell what it was?
no, because it looked like a cat, but it also looked like a big squirrel kind of animal,
What?
like a big squirrel. Yeah,
So maybe it was a raccoon?
Could have been.
I don't know. But then, so after it tumbled a little bit, I was like, oh, is it? Did it go out? And no, it was flopping on the ground.
Dang.
Yeah.
So it's like suffering to its death right now. Dude, that's brutal.
And then I was like, no. And then I was like, oh man, I can't run over another one. So then I had to just focus on the front because there was all these animals crossing.
That sounds crazy.
Yeah. Wildlife hour.
So, yeah, speaking of the hour. Right now, guys, this is episode 3, and it is currently 3 a.m. here at the studio. Okay, it really is almost 1 in the morning, no joke. It feels like it's 3 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
If you see our eyes that are bloodshot right now, I swear we're not high.
True.
We haven't smoked marijuana right before this episode, I
This is
promise
true.
you. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. Like, I
Yes.
wish I can show you guys. It's 12:40 a.m. right now. And we're here. We're so dedicated. What happened?
Yes.
We're just gonna be honest with you guys. We're gonna be honest. We were here recording. We had some issues with the cameras and stuff. We're already at home. It's like 11 o'clock at night. I hit up Anthony and I'm like, "Yo, dude, are you down to reshoot? Like, what time this week?" And then we're like, "We're busy this week. We got birthdays." And then I was like, Andrea and I are down to go right now and reshoot. And you're like, "I'm down. I'll be there." And you're on your way. And that's when you slaughtered an animal.
Unfortunately.
So I kind of feel like I'm an accomplice to this because I told you to come back so we can shoot this. But it is 12:45 in the morning right now. But we are here, episode 3. Special guest. We have a sponsor. We're gonna get into it. But before we get into our sponsor for this video, we have a special guest. My wife, Andrea
Hi, guys.
Santillano.
Welcome.
For the longest time, she had her last name in her voicemail. It said, "Hi, this is Andrea Garcia. Please leave a
Really?
message." Way after we were married, and then finally she changed it. It was so funny.
I
Yeah,
don't think I've changed it.
is it still like that?
I think I still have Garcia.
So I don't know why. Right now, when I was introducing, I almost said Garcia, but it's because of that dumb voicemail. So Andrea Santillano is here in the building right now
Amen.
as a special guest.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're so excited. We're gonna do a separate interview with you at like another time and stuff to get deep into your story, your testimony, all that, because you have a crazy, wild story. It's amazing what you're doing right now. But we'll get into that a little bit later. But you're really our special guest today, just hopping on the episode with us. So episode 3. With that being said, we have an amazing sponsor. We have Anchored Music is sponsoring this podcast, guys. We encourage you guys to go check out their stuff. The link is going to be in the description. You can go there, go on their website. If you guys don't know about Anchored Music, that is the label that Andrea is currently signed to. She just signed to them. We had an amazing worship night here at the warehouse. She's working on a single right now, one of her songs. And again, Anchored Music, man, their CEO is Sam. Sam is an amazing guy. I always call him as Andrea's boss. I'm like, your boss, your boss, your boss. But Sam's so amazing. He reached out and was like, man, I love your guys' podcast. What can I do? And we set up this sponsorship. So I'm wearing the God is Good tee. We got Anthony wearing another one. Andrea's wearing another one. That one says he's got my back, and on the literally on the back of the t-shirt is like a Jesus. Like, it's so cool. We got a couple more. This is one that Anthony's wearing right now.
Yep.
On the back, it says, pray more, worry less. It's funny because after we finished this podcast, it's like 11 o'clock at night, where Andrea and I go to Stater Bros. We're there shopping. All of a sudden, I see this t-shirt, and I'm like, what? And it's Anthony. We had just left the podcast, and he's there buying something. I come up to him, and I'm like he didn't even know it was me. I'm like, excuse me, can you pray for me? He like turned around real quick, like, what the heck? But that's the t-shirt that's right here that Anthony's wearing. Pray more, worry less. You guys can get this. This is another one right here. This one's pretty sick. Sorry, I just dropped that. This one says Jesus lives. This is like a metal hardcore type of tee. This one's really sick. I was wearing this the other day, and it's funny, some older black lady came up and was like, amen, like, I love your shirt. And I'm like, you could read that? That's crazy. That's like straight up like metal and stuff. So check that shirt out. That shirt's sick. This is one of my favorites though. This is the one. Almighty right here. Check that out. Hopefully you guys can see that in the camera. This is the Almighty tee. And this one's sick. This one's very like vintagey. If you can kind of see it and stuff, it's very like vintage, kind of worn. I wore this one on Thursday. This shirt is totally sick. You guys can get all these t-shirts and so many more if you go to Anchored Music. Like I said, the link is in the description. They're always having promo, free shipping sometimes. They'll throw a 50% off. Go follow them on social media. They have so much stuff that they're doing. Follow them on YouTube. They're on YouTube as well too. You'll see so many worship videos, and we're just excited. So thank you, Sam, for sponsoring this video. Anchored Music. Shout out, guys, go get yourself some merch.
Yes. Awesome.
With that being said, episode 3.
EP3.
EP3. It is 12:45 a.m. I'm going to keep saying that all the podcasts. We're reshooting this. Like, we already had talk. We already did an hour and a half podcast, guys. Like, we did an hour and a half podcast.
We did.
It was so sick.
It was.
But again, the cameras failed us, and we're back. We're back again. So we're going to get into it. We're going to go straight into it. We talked a little bit about just worship. So I want to open that up. We're going to talk a little bit about worship today. And a little bit of kind of where the culture's at, everything that's going on. Andrea, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. You guys are awesome.
I had an important question our last shoot. I was just like, the fans want to know, people want to know. It's burning question. What's it like to be married to Manny Santillano? Like, what is that like? She started laughing the last one. We were cracking up. But no, seriously, what's going on with you? What's going on with worship? You're really tapped in right now. You're meeting a lot of amazing people. What's going on with worship? Shout out some worship leaders that are out there. We were talking about that too, about some of the worship leaders that are just doing amazing, that are living right, that are really like about that life. And we're going to talk a little bit about, kind of the other stuff, the other side of it. So let's open it up.
Yeah. So we were just talking about just how amazing it is for me as a worship leader to be able to look up to these worship leaders that are, that have bigger platforms and are out there doing things. And they're just walking in holiness and walking in purity. And it's I feel like in this day and age, it's really rare to find. I think the more that I've been kind of, I feel like these last 2 years, I've been meeting a lot of worship leaders and different, just like musicians and stuff like that. Just realizing how much people compromise. I'm just going to be real. Yeah. How much people live a certain way, when they're leading on a Sunday, but then the rest of the week, it's like a whole different, life. And so it's been really like, it's been really different because for the last 10 years, I've been so, surrounded by like, my friends, like you guys, and like people that have the same mindset, have the same goal, have the same like way of walking with the Lord and like walking in all of that. And so being just meeting all these different people, I'm like, man, like there's like this whole new world that I didn't know, or I did, but I was never around. So like being around it, like at first was a little bit discouraging because I was like, man, like because then it's like as someone who, lives a certain way, how do I still live that way but not seem like I'm like being judgy or I'm being too much or like, which honestly I don't care if they think that I'm being too much, but like it was just like in the beginning kind of like how can I be around these people, but like they say certain things, whatever, and it's not like things that I agree with, or like it was just like a lot of that, but I think just like staying true to myself and being like, like I know who I am and walk in that and not be afraid of man and not be afraid to, speak up when I see something that I don't agree with, whatever. But it's been also amazing to see, like I said, like worship leaders, like shout out to Lindy.
Yeah, let's name drop.
Yeah.
People are always name dropping for like a bad way. But
That's
like,
true.
Name drop some good worship
But
leaders.
yeah, like
I like
Lindy Kofer, she's for sure one of the rare ones that, that I think we all look up to. We see her and we're like, man, like just what she stands for. She's for sure an example. She's setting a good example for worship leaders, because I feel like a lot of times, which I don't think it's wrong that people celebrate, getting like awards and stuff like that. I think that's awesome. I think that's really awesome. Like God can open a door like that. But I love worship leaders that's not what they're striving for. It's like their mind is like on the kingdom, and their mind is like first ministering to the heart of God, but also ministering to people and like writing songs for, this generation that desperately needs God, and needs encounters. And I think that's where I'm at. Like, I feel like that's what I'm looking towards. And yeah, like Jeremy Riddle, you have like Stephanie Gretzinger, like these rare people that are really like, they literally walk on stage and you can feel the anointing already oozing out of them. Yeah. And it's just amazing to be able to have those kind of leaders to look up to.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's like the good part of it. And then, yeah, just seeing that other side of it has been pretty crazy for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with, with Anthony, like, you're fairly new in this church. We're going to hit a year coming up here soon.
It's crazy.
That
is crazy, bro.
But what was it like coming here? Because our culture here at Harvest Time and stuff at the church is very like no compromise, and we're very careful what we do, what we watch, what we listen to, all these things. What was it like coming here? Because some people can be intimidated by that. We've had that before. People are kind of like intimidated and stuff like, oh, I don't know, they're kind of too much and this and that, where, there's a lot of churches that are okay with certain things, even in their leadership, even in their pastoral staff, like all that stuff. What was it like coming here and kind of like seeing like what we were a part of and stuff? Be honest, was it kind of too much? Were we crazy for being like that? Like, what was it like coming in?
I loved it. It actually, it's funny because being in Minnesota, there's no, like, name a worship leader from Minnesota.
You got 10,000 lakes.
That's right. But most of the like worship and sermons, and it came from the coast, like from, a lot of it came out of California. A lot of the ministers I was listening to, a lot of the worship was all in Cali. So, when I would come before the Lord, I would have all these songs on that were West Coast worship songs. So I was already like there, but I was in a different state. You know what I mean? And I felt the presence there. And in terms of church culture, there's a few churches that I didn't. There was a few churches that I served at for an extended period of time in Minnesota that were big churches. They were really big churches. They were AG churches, and so they had huge. I mean, AG is a big structure. It's a huge organization.
Yeah.
A lot of amazing things in the church, like really good leadership. Really good, like push for, what to do in certain scenarios and wisdom and things like that. But in terms of just the advance and the depth and the waiting on God and things like that, it would just get minimized and removed, you know, for a lot of different reasons. There's a whole lot of reasons behind it. So I felt like out of place a lot of times because I was with you in spirit, but not in the body, you know?
Yeah.
So I was in scenarios where I felt very out of place when I felt like I feel like it should be the opposite. You know, that's how so I felt like a fish out of water in a lot of groups and scenarios, and it was hard for me to fit in. I wanted to, but I just kept going, and I couldn't, you know, it was just, if I tried to stay there, I just felt very like claustrophobic spiritually.
That's crazy to like think about.
Yeah. So it was difficult, you know, and I had just pockets of little people, and, you know, shout out to Light of the World Church in Minnesota. They, good friend of mine, we went to high school together, and then he grew up, his dad's a pastor. They're from Russia, Ukraine, things like that. And they, you know, persecution, they suffered persecution, like real persecution, physical persecution. Yeah. And so when they came to the United States, there was roots, you know, they had suffered for Christ and they had given themselves. And so he was raised in that, but him and I had we were not Christians in high school. You know, just say that. Yeah. But we got, you know, I got saved, and then he reached out to me, and we started to connect, have awesome like fellowship, prayer, and his church. He invited me to preach at his church for the first time, and that body of believers is solid. I mean, going after the same things, and prayer nights, and just power, you know, and that was really cool. So I was around a lot, and the churches that God brought me to, you know, I learned a lot in, and God refined me a lot. So coming here, though, when I came to the church, I felt like family, you know, and it was so ordained because God led me from a whole nother state to family, you know, and I just kept saying, like, I feel like family, you know. People recently, they were like, "You're not Latino?" I'm like, "No." And they're like, "Oh, I just assumed you were because you're part of Harvest Time Church."
That's funny.
You know? And I'm like, "No, but I feel that, you know?"
Yeah.
So that's where I'm coming from.
That's good, man.
Yeah.
You for sure brought diversity.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah. We've had like, you know, different, but for majority we're like Hispanic church and stuff, but it's always good to like mix it up and stuff. Andrea and I were kind of talking about this as far as like, you know, kind of going back, just like, you know, the church and just, you know, where we're at, like in worship and stuff, a lot of compromise and everything. And it's sad to see. It's disappointing sometimes. And, you know, it can be, you know, discouraging. But I think, you know, we can really spend some time there and say a bunch of stuff and, you know, put people on blast and all that stuff. But it's like, you know, I think sometimes we got to focus on like, you know, the good. And I think as like, you know, as podcasters and content creators and all that, you want to focus on like the juicy stuff and the drama and stuff like that. But like Andrea said, there's a lot of amazing worship leaders that are out there that aren't compromising, that aren't drinking, you know, that aren't getting drunk, that aren't getting high. Like I'm talking about worship leaders here, like seriously, you know, and it's like, I love that Andrea is like that type of person that just can, you know, be like just a pillar of truth, you know, and, you know, I know the world, you know, man, she's going to blow up. I know that, you know, the world's going to hear her story and stuff. And I love is that she's not compromising, you know what I mean? She's really like sticking to her to the truth. You know what I mean? I don't want to say just her truth, because this is the truth. Like you should be consecrated. Like if you think about worshipers in the Old Testament, you know, you think about the Levites, you know, they were literally like in charge of the temple. Like they had, you know, duties and stuff, not just worshiping, but they took care of things. And, you know, they're very like, had a lot of like ministry under them and stuff. And it's like, think about like if you really think about the Levites, imagine them like smoking weed and like drinking and all this stuff. Like, heck no. Like God was straight up like, we went to Holy Holies by accident, you were getting killed, like straight up. Like there was like some reverence, you know, back then. I feel like we lose that. And, you know, we were talking about Shia Labeouf. Like, you know, he went to Catholicism. I was talking with Anthony. I was talking with you today. I was like, I feel like a lot of times us as Christians, you know, that the Catholics have on us is like that reverence. You know what I mean? And it's kind of good and bad because we have the relationship with God. We see him as a friend. We can talk to him. We don't have to go to man and have him intercede for us. And we can go straight to the Father. But I think sometimes we lose is like the reverence. And specifically with worship, I just feel like sometimes we lose that. And I shared that today before we started. I was like, I don't want to lose like the reverence and stuff we were talking about and stuff. Like always like have reverence for what we're doing. Like it's so important. So going back to worship leaders, specifically us, leading our worship team and stuff, we're really about that with our teams. It's like, well, let's go back and let's realize what we're actually doing.
Yeah.
We're leading people somewhere. You're not just up there because you're talented. There's a lot of talented people out there. You know what I mean? And churches will use that. Like pastors that are watching this, like don't just focus on like, well, this person's really good, but outside of this, they're doing this and that. You gotta have some sort of standard.
Yes.
And a lot of people, accountability is huge. Talk a little bit about accountability.
Yeah.
That's huge.
I was gonna say that's I think the number one thing that because I've met worship leaders where, I've asked them like, oh, like, so who's your pastor? Or like, and it's crazy when they say, oh, like, I don't have like a pastor. I just kind of go to church from church to church. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, man, like, and so I think it's the accountability because, I mean, that's what it is, and I feel like you're like a lost sheep. It's like you don't have a shepherd like helping guide you, and like keeping you accountable. You don't have people around you that are going to tell you like, hey, like maybe doing that isn't going to be edifying to you, you know? And I feel like it's so easy as a worship leader and musicians too, to get into all of that because it's like they operate only in their gifting and not the anointing. And it's easy to do that, especially when you're doing it in a church where they maybe are not, they don't really like move in discernment, or they kind of like you're saying, like there's pastors out there that they're desperate for help with worship. So they just, they have to kind of do what they do. Yeah. But like one thing that we've talked about is thankfully, we have a team that's solid that, they're very careful in all of that. And obviously we're not saying like, oh, like we're perfect and we're like, but it's like we set a standard and we walk a certain way, and we even like thinking about the narrow road, it's like it's narrow, and it's not easy, but that's what we know brings the glory. That's what we've seen brings like the anointing, and like God comes, and we've seen things happen because we live a certain way, you know? And so, but going back, like with our team, like we've been very, like we talk to them and we tell, we've had meetings, even that, like, hey, like you have to be careful, what you're, maybe what you're watching, what you're doing, blah, blah, blah. Because anything obviously could be an open door and stuff, but also because we take our role seriously, and like what we've been given and like the opportunity that we've been given to, minister to the Lord, but also like bring people with us, like when we're doing that. And so, I just think it's like super important. And I love that, here like I said, we've set a standard. And so when people come, it's just automatic, they feel like they're just like there with us, And so, it's been like, like there's certain times where we've had to like have those like tough talks and stuff like that. But at the same time, we've never made it not feel safe, for them to come and like, just share, maybe they're going through something or they're struggling with something, but like we're there to, help guide them, know? Yeah. But I think it's important, like accountability and having someone to kind of just like help you, because then, like I said, like you're just like this lost sheep, and I just feel like that's so dangerous.
It is.
It is.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about accountability.
It's huge. I think that I think it's a little bit different with musicians than a lot of positions in the church. I think it is, because I've met people who were so big. I mean, so big, and they didn't answer to anybody. And not just talking about musicians. I'm first talking about like people who are ministers. And I knew multiple prophets who were like so on point and like scary prophetic and were ministering, but then there was no like apostle. They, like the Bible, literally, they're always apostles and prophets together, and in terms of submitting, like there's a man right now who's ministering to like most of Russia, you know, and he's an American man. But I listened to something recently. He's like, yeah, I have people that I submit to. And he's doing more in Russia than probably any, you know, American minister. But he's like, I still submit my life to these men, and I'm accountable to them. And, you know, I ran with people who didn't have that. And so I saw that firsthand and what that did and the danger of it, because if you're way out at sea, you know, or if you're solo, and you know, Proverbs says, like, if you fall by yourself, like, woe to you, you know, nobody can pick you up. You know what I mean? But when it comes to musicians and worship leaders, I know I have friends who I love them, and they're gifted, they're talented, they know the Lord, they have a good relationship with God, but it's still, I mean, I've had dreams about them, and I've shared with them, and I said, you know, there's this going on, and some of them are blowing up like big, but I'm like nervous, you know, because I'm like, once you start getting up there, you start dealing with more stuff, and if you're not covered, you're not protected, you know, you don't have that you know, that, you know, the blessing that gets poured out over us at, you know, service, and we're gathered together, and there's a apostolic and fatherhood, like, covering blessing over us. We have no idea what that really does, like, you know, how protected we are. So yeah, I think success, and then access to keep moving up, and now with social media and things like that, and people blowing up, there's almost like a sense of, you know, like, separation between what's real and, like, what's happening, and that gap, you can start to lose track of, like, I don't need that, you know, and that's, I think, where ships start to, the anchor, you know, it comes out the bottom of the ship, and slowly but surely. So I think you're so right with the covering and the protection, and the accountability is so important.
Yeah, and I feel like it's scary too, because, like, what you're saying about, you know, like, like success and all of that, I'm like, it's so easy, like, to when you start getting, like, those open doors or, like, opportunities and stuff, and you don't have any covering, you don't have anyone, that's just so scary, because you can lose sight of God, you know, and then no one's, like, telling you, like, hey, like, you're getting weird, or hey, you know, like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that, for sure, I'm thankful that I have, like, people around me that will call me out on stuff, you know, and really like,
it's good.
It's important.
It's good. It's good. Accountability is everything, for sure.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of the reason why we kind of did this little trio thing. So what was it, like a couple weeks ago, you know, we were here tearing down, doing something, and we started watching, like, a YouTube video. We have, like, a monitor in the back that we use, but we, you know, use it for YouTube and stuff sometimes when we're just, like, hanging out here and doing stuff. And we watched the video. It was really good, right?
Yes.
Ruslan versus Paul. Ruslan versus Paul. Man, it was really good. I encourage you guys to go check that out. If you just type in, like, Ruslan, Paul, and then put, like, Beyonce, it should come up. But basically, for those that don't know, I'll give a real quick recap. And the reason why we're kind of, like I said, we kind of did this little show, because we watched this video, we watched the reaction, and we were kind of just talking about, we're going back and forth, and we're like, man, we have, like, a good little thing going right here. Like, we should definitely, like, do something together and you know, have a little podcast or whatever. But anyways, on the video, you have Allan Parr made a video, and he was talking about you know, Beyonce's new album cover. And I hadn't seen it. Andrea told me about it, and basically Beyonce is, like, riding on a horse, and she's wearing, like, something, like, really revealing and everything like that. So Allan Parr does a reaction video on it. I'm not sure what the reaction video was or whatever the case is, but in his thumbnail he puts the picture of her, and I guess a bunch of people were, like, writing to him right away and were like, why would you use this as a thumbnail, all this stuff. He ends up taking it down. Ruslan, who's a big YouTuber, ends up making a video and reaching out to him like, why did you take this down? You shouldn't have taken it down. Nothing was really wrong about it. If people have an issue with it, it's their issue, not yours. Like, you shouldn't have taken that down. And then you have this other YouTuber named Paul. Him and his wife, Andrea loves them. Paul and Morgan, like, you know, they do, like, videos and stuff. He reacted to it and was just like, no, it was wrong. It shouldn't have been. So it was cool. You know, they came together and did a video together, and it got spicy. There was a little bit of issues. I wanted to bring that up and talk about it because we were talking about it here. It was really good. What are your guys' thoughts on Ruslan's take on it? Because for those that haven't watched it, his whole take on it was, we should be able, as men of God, we should be able to see things. We should be able to live in this world, and we're gonna see things sometimes. We should be able to see basically anything that's not explicit. And to him, explicit was like someone that's like literally like naked or like literal pornography. But other than that, we should be able to see anything. Beyonce on a horse, anything revealing, just a bunch of different things. We should be able to see those things and not, go straight to lust or have an issue with it because they're in the world and it's just not a big deal. And then you have Paul, and he's like, not Paul in the Bible, Paul the YouTuber, right? You got Paul the YouTuber. It's just like back and forth with him because he's telling him like, no, it was wrong. I didn't want to see this on my timeline. I saw Allan Parr. I follow him. All of a sudden it showed up. It showed up on YouTube, showed up on Instagram. Like, I'm seeing her. I don't want to see this image of her, especially on Allan Parr's platform, who's a man of God and stuff like that. So what are your thoughts on that? Living in the world that we are. So we'll start with Anthony and we'll get the woman's perspective after that.
I like that. Did you know that Paul was the one who reached out to Allan?
Oh, did he?
Yeah. So originally he was the one who reached out to Allan and was like, hey, I have some concerns about it. And I think it was Allan who considered Paul's, correction. And then that's what caused him to take it down. So then when Ruslan made the video, Paul made the video and was like, I was the one who did it. And then they got together and then they started talking about it. I think Ruslan had Paul made a statement. He's like, man, you came out like out the gate, like firing, you were just guns blazing, which he's like, to me right away was like a, not maybe like a flag, but just a, whoa, I haven't heard you be this passionate in all of your hundreds or even thousands of videos, So that was like an interesting thing right off the bat. But I think Ruslan, his position, he was speaking as if all of his audience should be mature, and I'm sure, I remember him talking at one point on one of his podcasts, because I've watched him for a long time. He talked about covenant eyes. He talked about different ways to, he talked about growing up with, struggles with pornography. So it's not like he's never struggled there.
Yeah.
But then being at where he is now, I don't know if he forgot that he went through all of that, because I guarantee when he went through that, things were triggers. There was triggers. I've gone through that. I've got, we talked about it, and there's lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, pride of life, and lust of the eyes is very, it's America, it's social media, pornography's everywhere. Your eyes are gates, and I was just talking to a friend today, and I said, the Bible says your eye is the lamp of the body. And if your eye is good, your whole body's filled with light or revelation. But if your eye's bad, your whole body's filled with darkness. So your eyes are very important, you know. But yeah, the way Ruslan spoke it was very strong. It was almost like, if you can't handle that, then just get yourself off of all of social media in general, like go live monk type, but I don't think he lived that way, So it's almost like, I don't know if he forgot the process of what it is like to be tempted in those ways, because I understand when you go and all of a sudden you get to a place where you're like, it's no longer a temptation. It's almost like it's gone from, it's not a hold on you anymore, and I've experienced that where all of a sudden, there's present around me things that I used to struggle with, and it's not even a thought anymore. So I wonder if maybe that's where he was coming from, but he was really strong on it, and then they blurred it out and it looked even worse.
So they blurred out the thumbnail of Beyonce, so you can kind of see her, but then it just looks like a lot of skin. And it just looks blurred. It just looks like naked. It just like she's naked to me. Like that was crazy when we saw that thumbnail. Like, that's worse.
Yeah,
that was crazy.
But he also made a point. He made points that sounded right, but I don't think were. And he said things like, well, are you going to go to the beach and tell anybody who's wearing a two-piece bathing suit to not wear a bathing suit, to go put on a towel, Are you going to do that? And I'm like, that's not necessarily the same thing, because at a beach, that's a public place where that's going to be there, and you're deciding to go there, Whereas if you're Allan Parr, and you're taking content and pulling it into your domain,
right?
And people aren't expecting that. That's a totally different world, you know? But he was correlating those two like they were the same thing.
Yeah.
And so I think there was a lapse there in terms of connection. And then we also talk about it too, but his background, he came out of very Orthodox Pentecostal, where they have the head coverings and the skirts to the ground or dresses to the ground.
Yep.
So you could tell that he was also speaking on a bigger issue. Like he wasn't just speaking at the issue, he was speaking towards a bigger, purity culture, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I think there was a missing communication there too, because he was also speaking big picture and not just the scenario.
Yeah.
So I think there was a lot at play.
Yeah. What do you think, Andrea?
Yeah. I feel like there's a lot that Ruslan was talking about that I did agree on. Like I could see his point. And then a lot of things that Paul was saying that I agreed with a lot too. I love that Paul was so bold to message Allan Parr. But yeah, I agree with the whole self-control. I do believe that for so long, even growing up and stuff, we've always had where I feel like a lot of the blame was always on women, where Ruslan was saying his point is teaching men how to have that self-control and not always just blame the woman.
Yeah.
And so I understand that part. I did agree with that, because I'm yeah, it's true, but then what Paul was saying, I understood what he was saying, because it's true. It's a lot of times we follow certain ministers or people that we look up to because we feel it's a safe place. And coming from someone, I've shared this before, that I've struggled with pornography. Yeah, it's I've unfollowed a lot of people that have even just in my past, friends that I had in my past and stuff, that were they would post provocative pictures and stuff like that, and just stuff I didn't want to see, just things that that I just didn't want to see. And so which I think is fine. It's we have the freedom to be able to follow and unfollow whoever we want. So so what I see on my timeline usually is super clean. I don't really see anything bad. And so I can understand why if something like that were to be posted, obviously there's still things that pop up, right?
Yeah.
But when you're following someone because you feel okay, this is a safe person to follow, and then out of nowhere they post something like that, well, yeah, you're gonna kind of be whoa. Yeah. And so I feel if that was me, I for sure wouldn't have posted, the thumbnail, even the blurred one. It does look kind of funny, but yeah, so I see both sides for sure.
Yeah. It was interesting, and then it kind of got spicy for a little bit because Ruslan hits Paul with a throwback video. And basically in this video, he's all right, well, I got a video, we got a video real quick. Boom, shows the video. And the video, you got Paul and his wife, and they're talking about basically on their YouTube channel, they talked about sex and stuff, and how constantly they do it and all this and that kind of details and stuff. And then Ruslan comes back, he's well, what about this? And he was whoa, right? And what did Paul say? He's going to
the archives, digging through the archives.
He was ready for that.
Yeah.
So he was ready with that ammo. But basically Ruslan was saying you talking about sex with your wife, isn't that the same thing? You're bringing it up. Now people are thinking about it. Now, this and that. It's kind of the same thing. And Paul is well, yeah. And you kind of shared a little bit about that, about putting a warning as far as right. Share a little bit about that. What the difference is there.
Yeah. The difference is that and Paul brought it up a little bit. He said if the content that could potentially be past G rated, technically speaking, if that's in the video, you have an opportunity to warn your audience in advance. Hey, we're going to start talking about sex. We're going to start talking about this, this, that, the other thing. If you have young children, or if this is something you don't think you should listen to, tune out, go to another video, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But on a thumbnail, you don't have, that's your first impression. It's right there.
Yep.
So I think that was part of his argument as well, was that, hey, there's no warning on this. This is right here, and he probably gets notifications from Allan Parr saying, hey, a new video is posted. He looks, boom, he shook a little bit. So yeah, that's a good point of
and
argument.
I feel it's not about, because we said, you're gonna see things, like things are gonna pop up on ads or whatever, or like, you know, even like YouTube or whatever app you have, like sometimes like things just pop up, you know. But I think the point was the people that you chose to follow because you feel safe, and then they're posting stuff like that. So it's not like we're saying like, oh, like, you know, if something pops up, like we're mad at that person that's like randomly posting that. It's just more the like people that we follow, like especially if you're like a minister or like someone that's like, you know, has like a big platform that revolves around like the Bible and God, and like, you know, you look up to them, and then you follow them, and then they post something like that. I think that was like the point.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not like, we're gonna go to the beach and we're gonna get mad at people because they're in, you know, or you guys are gonna like go tell a girl to cover up. Like it's not about that. It's just more, the point was you follow someone because you feel like, okay, they're not gonna post stuff like that, and then they post something like that, and then that's kind of where it's like, you know.
It was funny because Ruslan's like, what are you going to do? Go to Walmart and talk to the manager? And then Paul's like, yeah, I am, or I did, or something. He's like,
he said he did.
He's like, no, I'm just kidding. I didn't talk to the manager. Shout out to Paul, man. That guy was like, I'm look, I'm not going to choose sides and try to make it a big old thing and have Ruslan, like, if he ever watches this, but hey, I like Paul's take on it. I'm just going to say it like that. I feel like he had a good understanding. I feel like I agreed with him a lot more. I feel like with Ruslan, he was kind of like, it almost kind of made like, kind of seem like some excuses to make it okay, and I didn't really agree with some, just to be honest. Yeah. But I like Paul's take on it, especially being like coming from, well, I know Ruslan's married too, but you know, Paul's married and stuff, so he really can like understand, and I don't know, I feel like he had some good points there. So
yeah, he did.
With that said, like, you know, just that whole dialogue, we were here for like hours just talking about it and watching him reacting, and you know, as we're like busy doing stuff here, and it was just funny. So I was like, man, we got to get on a podcast together. Like, we had some good back and forth, some dialogue and stuff.
Yes.
I wanted to switch gears real quick because you know, recently we saw Shia Labeouf basically kind of like getting saved and stuff. And I want to just open that up for a second here. You know, for those that haven't seen, you know, Shia Labeouf is definitely like encountering God right now, in a season of encountering God, which is wild. He's playing a role in a new movie as a priest. I kept saying pope all day. I don't know why. I was like, he's playing a pope. No, he's playing a priest in a new movie. I don't know if it's out yet or what, but I know he was filming it and acting and stuff. And the way he said that he does his movies and stuff is he goes like all in, like immerses himself in everything. And I share, you know, I was sharing with Anthony this morning. I was like, you know, he started going to you know, a Catholic church, and he even said that he took his truck. He lives in Pasadena. There was another church, I guess, in Pasadena, a Catholic church. He literally took his truck and was like, I'm gonna live in the parking lot. Like, this guy's crazy, a millionaire, has probably a big house, you know, in Pasadena or whatever. He's like, I'm gonna live in this church parking lot, in this, you know, Catholic church parking lot, and I'm gonna go to mass every single day, because a lot of churches like that, they have mass all the time. It's always open, kind of thing. Yeah. And he's like, I'm gonna go to mass every morning. I'm gonna start learning, because I'm gonna play this role. Like, I want to learn. And slowly, little by little, these priests started like encountering him, and started like hanging out with him, having a fellowship with him. Shia would invite them over, and he was sharing before this that he was literally on the verge of committing suicide. Yeah. He said he had a gun on the table, and he would constantly be thinking about like, man, I'm just gonna kill myself, because he was going through depression, addiction. He's married, but he was going with girls, just trying to find. Just, we see this all the time, right, in Hollywood, trying to find some type of peace, to trying to find that you know. Just that escape and stuff, just from the everyday stuff that they go through. So anyways, he started getting himself, you know, involved with this Catholic church, and he sits down with a priest for this podcast, and they're going back and forth, and it's a really good podcast. You know, I encourage everyone that's watching to go check that out. It's really good. It's really insightful, though. It's him and this priest going back and forth. But I just want to share something really quickly that really stuck out to me. He said, I like one of the things that he said was that he reached a point where in his life he'd tried so hard to do everything like the way he should, everything according to his power and his will. And he said he finally got to a point where that's when he was going to commit suicide, because he's like, I tried everything that I could. You know, I got my, you know, I did good in school. I did this, I did that, I graduated. I became an actor. I did amazing there, have all this money, but I'm not happy. I'm addicted. I'm trying to find this peace. I'm depressed. Like, I reached the max of what I can do, and it's not good enough, so I'm out. And then that's when he started encountering God. And he's on a journey right now. He's on a journey to find God and everything like that. But speaking of, like, you know, Hollywood, speaking of like actors and stuff, I kind of want to get your guys' take on that, because a lot of times we see these actors and they encounter God, but I feel like it's never really fully there. And we can say like, well, they're on a journey, but I feel like they never kind of reach that point. I'm gonna name drop, right? You got Kanye West, you got Justin Bieber, Chance the Rapper. I don't know. Give me some other names that you guys heard. Eminem. You told me about Eminem. Right?
Yeah.
And you hear about they found God, or they're Christian now and stuff, but they're never fully there.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen that? Like, what's your take on that?
I'll go. Yeah, I can go. Yeah. I've seen that a bunch. And when I heard the testimony of Shia, that was in my mind. It was in my mind because when Kanye went through, when everything was starting to come out with Kanye, people were like, I saw people go so far even, and they were like, he's the new, face of Christianity.
Yeah.
And like, they're like, everything he does is godly, and like, I'm like, well, let's just bring it back a little bit,
Yeah.
but I love what God's doing in his life, but let's allow time and fruit to prove and show like what's there, Even there was another very well-known musician. I can't remember his name right now. Shawn Mendes.
Oh, yeah,
You remember that?
He's another one, right? He was just in Maverick City and
He
stuff
was
like
in
that.
Maverick City talking about, encountering God. And I don't know how their lives have changed. And right, that's like the fruit. The fruit of it is like what you're saying is their life has changed. So there's a lot in Hollywood, and I think a lot of these people did a lot of things to get to where they were that they probably compromised all the way to that point. So they're used to that, and they know what it takes, the cost, and now they have, something here that's kind of tugging at everything they've built.
Yeah.
And so I think they really need consistency, which comes through discipleship, which comes through friendship, fellowship, covering, accountability, all of that, I don't know if there's people who are geared up and ready to go into those places and just, like the military, they have that where they have the black ops or they have the green beret. And if someone in enemy territory, hey, we're in trouble, they have a SWAT team that's going in and clearing house and they're rescuing somebody. You know what I mean? We need
They
that.
pop in like, hello.
Hello.
Inside joke.
Taking them out.
Inside joke.
Man.
I had to find somewhere to drop that in.
Yeah, that was a good spot.
Hello.
That was a good spot. I love that. That was good, Manny. I wasn't expecting that. But yes, they do. They would pop in like that, and risk you out. And I've never seen that. And I was talking with somebody about because in the beginning of the year, I actually created a vision board. I've never done this in my life, but I created a vision board, and it wasn't just things that I was like, I hope this happens, and like kick my back leg up and like, boom, my vision board. No, these were like pictures. These were pictures that represented like prophecies that I had. And so I created this board that was just visual prophecy, but one part of it was there was an actor on there, or he's more of a YouTuber.
Yeah.
And it was so cool. I found this picture on the internet that had him, and he was smiling, and above him was like a word on like a backdrop on a red carpet, but it was cut off, and it said free, Free. And I found it, and I'm like, I've been praying for him since like 2018.
Wow.
He's not saved.
Wow.
But I saw this picture, and it said free, and I was like, whoa, that's like my heart. I want to see him free. So I put that on my board, right? And then when I came here, people started having dreams about like me going into Hollywood and being with actors and things.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, and I thought about it. And then I thought about my mentor right before he died. One of the things he said to me was, he said, and I wasn't even thinking about coming to California. It's so crazy it was. He said, Anthony, we have prophecies to go into Hollywood. And I was like,
dude, and what you're doing now.
Wow.
I know. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, that's really cool, And then, everything transpired, and God told me to come here, and I forgot that he said that. And then one day I was out here, and I was reminded what he said. And then the Lord spoke to me. He said, none of the words that I speak will fall to the ground.
Wow.
So, and I felt like I took the mantle from my mentor, and I was to do and carry on what he didn't do, and wasn't able to do. So I was like, whoa, am I going to do? And then that started coming up, right? So, but with all of that being said, I think that there needs to be people who are ready, who God has raised up and equipped to be able to step into those people's lives.
Yeah.
And I was talking about it. I'm like, would I take somebody out? Let's say I was mentoring somebody, or someone was getting saved or got saved through my ministry or whatever. What would I do with that person if they were living in the limelight and they got saved? Would I take them out and say, you can't be in it? Would I let them be there? And I'm like, I think I would help them and guide them for a period of like, hey, let's just remove for a second. Let's ground.
Yeah.
Let's dig real deep. Let's take some time, separate, like pray, fast, find the Lord, have some deep things happen, and then just slowly reintroduce you and reintroduce you so that you don't lose the influence, the audience, but you're grounded now, and you know how to come back and pull away and back to the presence, and kind of do this thing.
Yeah.
There needs to be people like that who are in that space.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. What about you, Andrea?
Yeah, I just think it's just accountability, going back to that. And I feel like what you're saying, like having, like them having actual, like, and who knows, because we don't know, like, if they do have, or if they did have mentors and maybe they just didn't want to, like, be accountable to them. It's like people have their own, they make their own choices. But yeah, I would say just accountability. But I could say too, what I had said earlier, we were talking about this and I was saying, then I feel like one of the things is the fear of man.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I can't imagine like having that kind of platform, and it's like a secular platform, so you have millions of fans that are not Christian, and then you get saved, and then you start preaching the gospel, you start saying things about about the Bible, and a lot of it is offensive, to the world. It could be, it's offensive even sometimes to Christians, so I can see why it's hard for them to fully commit and to be it like 100%. But we do have certain people, like we were talking about Derek Carr, right?
Yeah. DC4, my guy.
So he's one of the rare ones, but I just feel like, it has to be the fear of man, because I can't imagine being in that position and having to, I want to say like, no, like I would be truthful and I would speak the truth, but I'm not in that position,
Yeah.
But yeah. So going back to talking about Derek Carr, I want you to share, because I know he touched your shoulder.
Yes, he did. He touched my jersey.
He did.
And he never washed his shoulder ever again.
I felt the Holy Ghost right now. No, it was so cool. We went to Las Vegas, Nevada for a men's conference. That's wild. I remember like announcing it here, like we have a men's conference coming up in Las Vegas. And I was like, I don't know about that one, but yeah, my dad looked at me sideways. He's like, yeah, no, trust me. There's a Las Vegas men's conference. Like we got to go. And sure enough, a bunch of us guys went from church. It was awesome. We had a good group. We had an Airbnb. It was so much fun. But anyways, Derek Carr. Shout out to Derek Carr, quarterback for the Raiders right now. As you guys know, Las Vegas, the Raiders are in Las Vegas. So he lives there, puts on a conference every year. And it was so good. We went, and he was amazing. He's a real man of God, really serious about his walk. He preaches all the time. He uses social media. Like people know, where he's at. He's always posting flyers for his church. He has a big church in Las Vegas that he attends. And he's always posting stuff like that. And even after a football game, he'll get even Christians from the other team. They'll come together. Win, lose, doesn't matter. They'll come together and they'll literally kneel down and they'll pray after the game, which is so awesome. Sometimes they'll get it on camera and stuff. But yeah, he's a serious man of God. I remember I was worshiping. I was wearing his jersey and stuff, and it was it's his conference, and Corey Osbury was there that night. So amazing, man! That worship was fire.
Yeah, it was.
But we're worshiping and stuff, and Corey's on stage, and we're all worshiping and stuff, and all of a sudden, like I just feel like a little hug from behind, right? He gives me like two hands and stuff. And I look, and it's Derek Carr. I was like, what? And I was wearing his jersey at the time. And I was like, how's it going? He's like, hey, what's up, buddy? And we went back to worshiping and stuff in the front. It was awesome. It was a good time. But going back to it, he's like a real man of God, doesn't care about anything, doesn't care about any of that stuff. He's like, hey, this is what I'm about. And you don't have to be weird about it. I think people need to understand that people that are watching, like if you're called to that, you don't have to be weird.
Yeah.
But just stick to what, like Derek Carr, he's not weird. He's not always preaching. He's not preaching hell all the time, anything like that. He's just serious what he believes. He lets people know, and it's amazing. And people will reach out to them. And it's funny because they can get, a lot of bad things said about them, like, oh, you're this, you're that, but you never know the people that are hitting him up, when they're going through something, 3 a.m, 2 a.m. And right now it's 1:30 in the morning, right? Like people will hit you up at those times and they might not say anything at all. People don't know that they're struggling with this. They put on this facade like everything's good. I'm partying. I'm doing all these things. But then, bam, that depression hits or that anxiety hits.
Yeah.
Who's the first one they're going to call? They're going to call the person that they believe is closest to God, So
right.
it's like, it's important. But yeah, going back to just Hollywood and stuff, man, talk to us a little bit about kind of what you're up to. It's crazy from Minnesota to Southern California, and now the whole LA venture that's going on right now. You're going to be very strategic, I feel, in that scene. Talk to us a little bit about what's going on with you.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting. It's a new thing, and it happened just through prayer. I think is really like the biggest thing is, it happened through prayer and prayer and prayer. And I was working a job, and just being faithful there and pushing carts, just pushing grocery carts at this job, and I'm like, God, I don't think you brought me to California just to like push grocery carts, and I felt just, like I felt stuck, but God was working with me. And I'm telling you, when Harvest Time, when we had David Fang come, I wasn't able to make it because I was working. I said, God, I didn't even use my mouth. I said, open my heart, and I said, I can't be at church tonight. I'm like, I'm mad about that. I said, but there's so many prophets in California. I'm like, just send a prophet to me. And I'm like, I'm here. There's a big parking lot. Like, send a prophet to me. Okay, I go inside, forgot about it. And this woman, really, really like old woman, like I could see through her skin old. Like you could see the blood vessels and stuff, like thin
Wow.
skin, old, right? She's at the cash register and she looks at me and she goes, hello. I was wondering what he was going to say.
I'm going to
Is
drop
that why
that.
you're looking at me?
I'm going to drop that every time I
He was
can.
like waiting.
I was wondering what he was going to say.
Look, if you were raised in the hood, you grew up in the hood, you know where that's from.
Hello.
Oh, man.
I love that.
So good.
I love that. I was so wondering what you were going to say. You're
I
like,
was waiting for it. So she pops up.
she pops up. She looks at me and she goes, she looks at the cashier. She goes, I'm going to need his help to bring the groceries out. And I said, okay, cool. And she looked at me and she went, you look really happy. And I was like, I am really happy. That's what she said. She's like,
Aww.
but she was pretty old, So we go out to her car. I'm taking the groceries. I put it in her car. And she goes, why are you so happy? And I could feel her leading me in a conversation. I was like, because I was like, I'm going to like dance with her a little bit. I'm like, because I know my purpose. And she goes, just classic, like so quick. She takes her groceries, not even looking at me. And she goes, and what is your purpose? And I was like, who is this lady? I'm like, well, to know God. And then she like drops her groceries and she looks and she goes, Jesus. And I was like, whoa. And when she said his name, the presence just came over me.
Wow.
And she was like, isn't he lovely? Isn't he kind? Isn't he? And I started crying in Sprouts. And I'm like,
Anthony's
oh
a
my
crier.
gosh, I'm a crier. I'm a crier. I really am, huh? And I was crying today at service.
Wow.
I really was. And she starts ministering to me, like prophesying. She interprets this dream that I had. Like she starts going on. And I'm like, what? And at the end, I'm just wrecked, and she leaves. And I found out, do you guys know who Catherine Kuhlman was?
Legend.
Legend.
Yeah.
Catherine Kuhlman mentored this man, and this man mentored this woman.
Wow.
So this woman was
crazy.
like connected to Catherine Kuhlman. So when she was like, isn't he lovely? Isn't he? It sounded just like her.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, and the dream that she interpreted for me was about Catherine Kuhlman.
Wow.
It was so wild, right?
It's crazy.
So God's like, I can show up in your life. Like you can be pushing carts. Like I'll send a prophet. And I totally didn't expect that woman. Like I expected someone I knew,
Yeah.
right? So, God's speaking to me, pushing carts, and he's just preparing me, But one day I said, God, I need a job. I need something. I need an opportunity. That's what I said. I need a different opportunity. I felt led to pray that. Like, I need something else. And I turn around and there's this woman standing there, just kind of just in the, I'm out pushing carts again, random part of the, parking lot. And she's standing there and her shirt says, God answers prayers. And I was like, first of all, why are you standing like right behind me? There's no reason for you to be right there, pushing carts. And I was like, what? And she's like, that's a message, huh? I was like, you have no idea, because I was crying again, praying out there. Within 45 minutes, I'm on the phone call, and it's with this woman who I'm working with right now in LA. She goes, hey, I have an opportunity for you. Same words. And I'm like, I'm thinking about it. So she offers me this opportunity. I pray about it. I fall asleep when I'm praying. Dang it, I'm falling asleep when I'm praying. Like, this shouldn't do that. But I woke up and I was so clear-minded, and I heard the Holy Spirit say, take a step with her. Take one step. So I was like, So I called her back. I said, I'm going to take one step. I literally transferred the same words. I'm like, I'll take another step. So long story short, well, I guess it's not really that short, but long story is, after time and time passed, and I was starting to figure out what the company was all about and what we were doing and all that kind of stuff, I finally got into it. I'm like, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to do. Like, I found out the vision of the company. I found out where it was going. I saw the things. I saw, what God was opening up to my eyes. I saw beyond all of it. I'm like, whoa, all of a sudden it just started overwhelming me. I'm like, this is it, So we were, wrestling back and forth with signing agreements and things like that. And this one day it just opened up and we finally got everything detailed, laid out. We signed the agreement. The next day, my friend called me from Texas, and he's talking with me, and he said, yeah, the Lord told me yesterday I only have 9 more months left in Texas. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And he said, yeah, then I went upstairs and my landlord was there, and he put a new contract on the table. And he said, here's a new lease agreement. And it was for 9 months. And so he signed it. And I'm like, you signed a contract yesterday? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, hey, wait a second. I did too. And then I started counting out the months, and it was 9 months. So we both signed 9-month contracts in the same day. And so the Lord just confirmed to me, like, what I stepped into was what he wanted me to. And at the end, something was going to be birthed from what we were doing. 9 months, right?
Wow.
So what I'm doing is I'm working with this, I'm going to say the name of the company. I'm working with this company called LA Style Magazine. And it is the leading luxury lifestyle publication in Los Angeles, covering lifestyle, covering, celebrity life, covering restaurants, covering, what's happening in the media. It's kind of an immersive company covering a lot. Big vision, though, beyond just this, So I'm helping with business development executive. That's my role.
Nice.
So I'm helping in operations, things like that, sales, but also, there's a lot that I'm helping with, and I'm really excited because I built a business in Minnesota. So I'm working like almost as a business owner in someone else's business. And so, I see that as being a very good asset. And I'm really excited.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. You're gonna have such an impact, man, in Hollywood.
Thank
Like,
you.
you're just so personable already, and like, people are gravitated towards you, and then once they know, you know what I mean, like what you believe in and stuff, like I know it's a huge open door. That's
Yeah.
amazing, man. I'm excited to hear like the testimonies and stuff.
Thank you.
And Andrea, like with you too, like, man, you're called into something amazing as well too. Like different spheres, like your sphere is different than hers, but equally as important, And
Yes.
it's like, you have crazy opportunity before you, and you're barely kind of starting with it. Like I said, you just kind of recorded, and it's going to be released in a couple months and everything. But talk to us a little bit about kind of where you're at, because you're a worship leader. You're gonna, like I said, people are start knowing you. You just did a video with Brittany, which is so amazing. She dropped that. Like, so many people like are starting to like hear about you and stuff like that. How do you remain, relevant in worship culture when so many people are compromising and are doing these things, but you're like so stuck on like what's biblical? You're stuck on truth. You know what I mean? You're not wavering. Do you kind of see a little bit of a struggle there? Like, how's it been with like your journey and stuff, doing music, connecting with people?
It's just like, I guess what I was saying earlier, like it had, like, I feel like in the beginning was kind of, could be a little bit discouraging, because you kind of feel like, can I be vocal about it, or can I be myself? But I think I'm learning that you could be yourself, like, stay true to yourself, and don't be afraid to, like, say no or get out of a certain conversation, or, you know, like, I just think that that's so important, like, for you to stay true and be who God has called you to be, you know, and like not be afraid to not, I guess, like, be that, you know, and not just stand your ground and just be who you are. And I feel like when you walk and you're walking in who you really are in front of people that maybe are living a certain way or whatever, or are different than you, you're impacting them, you know, and it's like, don't let people influence you, kind of thing. Like, you influence them. Yeah. And so I feel like I'm learning to not, you know, be afraid to, you know, like I said, be who you are, and like stand your ground, and, you know, not just always, and I don't mean like to always just be like preaching and be like, oh, that's wrong, you shouldn't be doing that. It's just more like you living the way you're supposed to live, and let that change people, because it really does. Like, I've met people that have literally told me, like, man, like, you're different, you know, or like and maybe because they've been around other people that are, you know, just like live a certain way, that they do whatever they want to do, they can sin whenever they want, you know, kind of thing. But when they're around people that are truly walking in it, you know, like, I just feel like that changes people, because they're drawn to that. They want, it's like, whether they know it or not, we hunger for that. We hunger to be like Jesus, you know? And so, like, when we're around people that are like Jesus, or, you know, we're around people that, you know, are living a certain way that's, you know, that God calls us to be, right? Like, living righteously and stuff like that. Like, people are just drawn to that, you know? So I feel like, just not being afraid of that. And I would just say,
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And I feel like all of us, like I said, we're all kind of stepping into something, even with this podcast right now. Like, it was so funny. I met this lady, like, randomly at a 7-Eleven. She saw, like, I had like a Maverick City shirt or something. It had something about Jesus, scripture or something. And she's like, oh, that's a nice shirt. I turned around and she's like, oh, like, I totally saw your podcast. Like, I was like, what? And yeah, she went to like a victory outreach in that city, and she saw Ryan's podcast, saw me and stuff like that. Like, that was kind of cool, you know?
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy, you know?
That's awesome.
And that was just, you know, one little thing. But for me, I was just like, man, like, I know as this podcast grows, like, you know, I'm going to start having an influence and, you know, stuff like that. And we always got to be careful, like Andrea was saying, not to always be like crazy preachy either, you know, and all of that, because you can turn people off. You know, we want to be like strategic, you know. And here with the podcast, it's a little bit different, because we're very vocal and people are like want to know, like hear what we're saying. You know, with you guys, it's a little bit different, because, you know, it's more of connections with people face to face and stuff. So it's a little bit different. But even for me, like, it's important for me too to be like, all right, like, what am I doing, like, with this podcast? What, you know, what am I putting out there? You know, not always trying to go for the drama or the juicy stuff. Like, let's talk about God's goodness. Today I talked about favor at church, you know. So amazing. I got to speak, you know, and
it was so good.
I really thank you guys. And you chased me down. That was so cool. You know?
That was amazing, huh?
Yeah, it was awesome, man. It was different. I felt really good today. But I talked about, like, the favor of God, you know, and it's good to talk about these things, not always just focus on the negative, because sometimes it's easy to focus on that because it's so juicy and it's good to talk about. And I know people love to, you know, watch YouTube videos on stuff like that, controversy and stuff. It's just like part of our nature almost. But it's like, all right, like, what is God doing? Let's speak life. Like, Andrea's really big on that, like speaking life and stuff like that, you know? So that's good. Man, we're almost getting close to 2 a.m. right now. Right now it's 1:50 in the morning. People think we're lying, but like, seriously, it's like 1:50 a.m.
It is.
So we're going to wrap this up here soon, but man, thank you, Andrea, just for being on here. I really appreciate it. This is just a little glimpse, because like I said, I want to get you on and do like a real interview with you and break down your story, because you have an amazing testimony. And like I said, everything that you're doing now with recording, with Anchored, here at church, all that stuff, it's just amazing. So thank you for kind of being our little special guest today.
Thank you guys for having me.
It was good. We have a good little chemistry going. So they might see more of her pop in. So this was
I'm down.
This was your little test.
Yes.
Girl power.
Girl power. That's right.
That's good. So with that being said, man, guys, go check out Anchored Music. Again, as a sponsor for this podcast. Go check them out. Get yourself something online. Buy something for someone else. It's September, but hey, Christmas is coming up in a couple months.
Yeah.
Go buy something. If you like a certain shirt, trust me, things will sell out. They'll sell out as far as like the sizes and stuff. Make sure that you guys buy something ASAP. The link will be in the description. That's episode 3. We'll see you guys on the next episode. Have a good one.